Well, for more on the border and its effect on our southern states, I want to turn to Representative Pat Fallon from the great state of Texas. Congressman, good morning to you. You visited the border this summer with former President Trump. You've been critical of the reversal of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. Biden previously called it inhumane, and now he's putting it back in place. Your reaction to that?
Well, good morning. And, Joe Biden is the one that's been inhumane. His policies have been inhumane. When you consider, nobody wants to talk about in the mainstream media what's really going on, not just across our southern border, but in Mexico and Central America when these migrants travel across the entire country of Mexico. It's estimated as high as 30% of the women are raped or sexually assaulted along the journey, and they're at the mercy of the drug cartel, some of the most evil people on the planet. And there are murders, and then think about the drugs that have been smuggled across the border as well. President Biden's first and foremost duty is to protect Americans, to keep them safe, and he wants to do that. He should secure the border. There has been, with fentanyl, it's 11,368 pounds of fentanyl has been seized just this year alone. That's enough to kill every single American 8 times over. And methamphetamine seizures just last month were over 15,000 pounds. And so it's very clear that, yes, the conditions are inhumane, but it lays at the feet of Joe Biden.
Yeah. Well, as I was mentioning to our correspondent Jason just a second ago, I have seen firsthand what you're dealing with, having covered the surge in March out of McAllen and also a short while ago in Del Rio, Texas. To what extent has Texas had to shoulder the burden in the absence of this policy?
Oh, to a disproportionate degree, and tremendous degree. And what Joe Biden has also done is he's not made, it's not just the 4 states on the border, Mexico, Arizona, California, and Texas that are border states. He's made all 50 states border states. When you allow 1.7 million people to cross the border illegally in 1 year under a supposed pandemic, and it was so severe, COVID, that no one's crossed the northern border, and no travelers were allowed to come to the country legally, but you allow nearly 2 million people to cross illegally. So it's been very difficult, and we've had as many as 10,000 10,000 state troopers along the border trying to augment. And it's a federal duty to secure the border. It's not a state duty. We don't have the resources like the federal government does. So we have the resources to seal the border and secure it, but Joe Biden lacks the will.
Well, Biden passed the ball to Kamala Harris to run point on this, and it's been more than 5 months since her visit to the border. Has the vice president or anyone in the administration reached out? And if so, are they helping out in any way?
No, thank you. It's a great question, because Vice President Harris has been an absolute abject disaster, not even a disaster, a catastrophe as a quote-unquote border czar. She's been there one time. She went to El Paso, where the issue's not at El Paso. It's at the other places like you had mentioned in McAllen and Del Rio and other areas. She's completely ignored it. She's put her head in the sand, and she had the audacity to say that the root cause of the migration crisis was climate change. Yeah, I would agree with that. It was the climate that changed at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue come January 20th. Because when you cease border wall construction and when you essentially ban deportations, even of the predators that are preying on migrants and other people of color along the border, and then in President Trump's policy, of course, the Migrant Protection Protocols, the Wait in Mexico policy, had worked wonders. And the proof's in the pudding. Let's look, Kemeny, at the numbers. President Trump in 2020, when he was in charge, 400,000 illegal border crossings. This year, in the first 10 months, 1.7 million. So it's 4 times worse. The flood became a trickle, and now it's a flood again.
Yeah, it was incredible when I was down there to just see massive amounts, the incredibly large groups of people just walking across. Over the last week, Democrats have continued to blame President Trump for the border crisis. Listen to this.
Give us the time to rebuild a system that was entirely dismantled in the prior administration.
We're trying to work through what was a dismantled and unprepared system because of the role of the last administration.
What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border.
Joe Biden inherited a huge mess on immigration.
Representative Fallon, Congress, Democrats, they've had time and they've had the control to pass their proposed immigration reforms. Now they're trying to wedge protections for migrants into their social spending bill. What's the forecast there given previous rejections by the parliamentarian?
Yeah, that's first of all, that was a master spin. I mean, I couldn't believe they were lying with a straight face like that. That was just absurd. And it's clear that anything to do with migration, illegal migration, cannot pass and will not pass muster in the Senate vis-a-vis the parliamentarian. And they're trying to do it anyway. They're trying to force it, essentially a round peg in a square hole. So we're hoping that doesn't happen, because we have rules for a reason. I mean, Nancy Pelosi stretches and breaks the House rules all the time. You'd hope it doesn't happen over in the Senate, particularly when they have a 50-50 split, and they don't have a favorable. Joe Manchin has been keeping them in check, at least for now.
Yeah. And just quickly before we go, Representative Fallon, I want to talk a little bit about the constant activity at the border and what Customs and Border Patrol officials are dealing with. And certainly when I was down there, I ran right into a narcotics operation. You mentioned the massive amounts of fentanyl coming across the border, but then you also have the ranchers along the border that are constantly dealing with those issues. Can you paint a picture of for us of just how bad this problem is right now?
Yeah, Clemente, it's chaos, and it's lawless. Because what the federal government, the United States federal government, should be controlling our border and our frontier with Mexico. Instead, we've allowed, well, I should better state it, Joe Biden has allowed the Mexican drug cartels to do so. They are so powerful that they've shut down the press in Mexico. If you report on their activities, you're most likely going to be killed. And the mainstream media in this country ignores that completely. And that's a story, and people need to know what's really going on. But it's not only the murders, it's incredible the amount of power that they have. And they have the GDP of a nation state. I mean, it's estimated their GDP somewhere between $30 and $40 billion a year. That's the size of Estonia and Latvia, NATO allies, their GDPs. So we need to tell the American people the truth. And the reason why the liberals don't want to do that is if the American people knew the truth, that border would be secure immediately.
Yeah, not to mention the impact that this has had on businesses at the border, particularly with the closing of the Del Rio Bridge. Interviewed businesses owners along there as well, worrying that that could very well happen again with the numbers that we've seen coming across the border. Representative Pat Fallon, thanks for spending your morning with us.
Thanks, Clemente. God bless.